Welcome to the Zveda podcast. I'm Jamie.
And I'm Lorena.
We're a community for women by women. We're here to help each other rise to impact generations.
Hi, ladies. Welcome to the Zveda podcast. It's good to see all of you today. Hope that you're doing well. We're excited to bring you some fun content for this episode. But before we jump into the main part of our podcast today, we have a really cool article that we want to share. It's from a group out of the UK, actually, and it's called 10 Tips You Need to Learn About Being a Grown-Up from the Adulting Manual. Even like that title just stuck out to me.
It's awesome. We need this.
I know we do. It's funny because I was like, oh, this is an article from the UK. Like, what is the conversation like, in different countries?
Yeah.
Because adulting is a global thing. And so some of the things on this article that are really cool that I wanted to just kind of briefly touch on, and we'll share this more in Patreon for y'all to see the article, read it in its full length. But a couple things is that the world doesn't end if you say no.
Ooh.
That's a good thought, right?
That's a good life lesson.
Yeah, because there's going to be so many times in life where we have to say no in order to say yes to something else, something better, to say no to preserve, our energy or to, preserve our commitment for something different.
Yeah, I know my coach always says, practice the pause. So before you commit to something, just, let me think about that.
Yeah.
And actually think about it, not feeling like you are obligated. So that's a good one.
Yeah. One of my previous bosses had said to me that he's like, Lorena, normally I take at least 24 hours to sleep on a decision that I'm going to make instead of just jumping into the decision itself. So I think that's, another great tip. Another piece in this article is comparison is pointless, which I think that is absolutely valid because, what measuring ourselves to other people, what does that really do? What does that accomplish if it's true that each of us are on a very unique journey? Some people have different passions, different commitments, different limitations that are just, in reality that it's not a 1-for-1. So, instead of focusing energy on comparing, focus it on what you can do to improve yourself and things that you're going after.
Yeah, it's one thing to look up to someone, but it becomes dangerous when you're like, I want to be like so-and-so.
Yes.
Because you really don't know the path they've walked. And there's probably some things you wouldn't want to experience that they have, Yeah.
Yeah. Let me see another one here. This one's really good, is that thoughts aren't facts.
I think a lot of people need to hear that right now. And
yes.
the climate that we are in.
It's true. I mean, there's, everybody has their own platform for sharing their opinions, their thoughts. And while I think that's great and healthy because it allows for free speech and it allows.
We're one of them, right?
Yeah, exactly. We're sharing thoughts that we have, but to know also that there is a difference between things that are fact and that are objective and then opinions. And so, I think just that nuance, that detail of that thoughts are not facts, I think is very important. So there's just a couple of nuggets in this article that I thought were really cool. So again, we'll share this on Patreon so that we can continue the conversation about it within the community. But Jamie, you want to take us into the main part of our content?
Yes. Well, I just want to say that we're excited that we are on podcast episode 14.
14!
I mean, come on.
It's a big deal.
It's so great. And I know that there's several of you that listen just consistently. We want to thank you for supporting us.
Thank you.
And be sure to share our podcasts with the ladies in your life. If there's one that speaks really directly to you or that was really interesting to you, share it. That is what will help us help everyone in our community expand our audience. And ladies, we say it all the time, but that's how we rise together. Thank you for sticking with us. So today's episode is about women are incubators. Turn your ideas into purpose and action. So we're excited to dig into this topic. I believe it was episode 8 where we talked about one of our core values being we aspire to awakening. And what does that really mean? How do we bring those dreams and desires and things that we might daydream about into reality? You know, how can we shift that into a passion project or actually a full-time career?
Yeah. And we talked about how, before this episode, the last one was all about awakening the child within. So this is kind of part 2 of digging deeper into that first core value of ours that we aspire to awakening.
So good. So let's dig in. And we thought that it would be valuable to, we hear that word a lot, incubator. What the heck is that? We often hear about that when it relates to startups. An incubator is a place where startups can gather to just brainstorm and create and birth their ideas.
Bringing like a think tank, right?
A think tank, yes. So the other thing that I thought of when Lorena started talking about this concept of women are incubators is the concept of a child being in an incubator, an actual incubator.
Like after a baby is born.
Yes.
In those, first few days of life, kind of that nestled little environment,
yes.
right?
It's a little environment that is safe and secure. And you can also compare it to a think tank, right? An incubator. It's a little bubble, a safety bubble where you might have the people closest to you brainstorming with you and planning and business planning and thinking. And so we really wanted to talk about the fact that if we stay in that incubator, our purpose may never be discovered, because if we keep it to ourselves, it won't truly be birthed into the world. So that's our goal today, is to really dig more into the thought of taking those ideas and passions and how can we put action to those and really even discovering them to begin with.
Yeah, I think that's powerful, Jamie, that you say, that it's part of our purpose and our design as women to take thoughts from, that initial kind of creation and through this incubator, right? Like being the way that we think about things and conceptualize new ideas, and just kind of hold things, in our minds or in our hearts, but then also letting those ideas come through and letting them come into fruition, letting them be realized in our lives.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so powerful. I think something on that, as we've just kind of laid the foundation for what, an incubator is, and that's kind of a core facet of just who we are as women. Part of that is, okay, when you're putting something into an incubator, it then is in this perfect environment for it to grow and transform. But we really want to emphasize what we put into the incubator matters, or what we take into our minds and our hearts matter, because those things in that perfect, environment will just be nurtured and will grow. So if you take, thoughts of life and righteousness and positivity into your mind through things that you read or things that you watch or things that you listen to, those things will grow. It's like putting, seeds in a pot of some nice, rich, loamy soil and watering it and giving it sunlight. Those things will grow inside.
Yeah, that's a really cool way to think about it. I think to the people that you surround yourself with is really important as well.
Yeah.
So, I tell my son all the time, don't listen to that song. He'll throw a song on and maybe it's a little negative or may throw in a few cuss words, God forbid. And I'm like, no, don't, turn that off. That's just, what is it doing for you? And I know that's like a simple example, but it's true. Like, what are we listening to all day?
Yeah.
Are we just keeping a mainstream TV channel on all day, and that negativity is constantly in our mindset. What are we watching in terms of a Netflix series or Prime series? What are we listening to in terms of music? Like, what are we doing to create inspiration? Is really, I think, what you're trying to say is like, what are you putting into your mind? Like, are you having moments of peace? Do you have moments where you're getting into the word? Are you having moments of prayer? I know earlier this particular week, we posted about the Daniel diet, and I was just really impressed with Dr. Axe is his name, and how he shared that, what we put into our bodies is really important.
Absolutely.
But he was like putting this holistic picture together in the video that we shared. What do we put into our minds? What are we putting into our bodies? What are we eating? And then are we receiving from the Lord in prayer? Are we actually spending time praying and, meditating and quiet and just receiving?
Yeah. I think that's powerful, Jamie, because again, it's the inputs that are brought in that then grow in that incubator. And a scripture that is actually one of my just life verses since I was a little girl is Proverbs 4:23, that the idea of guard your heart, for it is the wellspring of life, or said another way, from your heart flow the issues of life. So it's our heart, what's inside, our soul, being our mind and our will and our emotions. That is the incubator that we have dominion over. And so if we're putting the truth of God's word in our heart, that will grow and that will produce, fruit and things outside of our lives. But I think that that's key. I think, Jamie, as you're talking about that post that we did earlier this week, that as we're inputting things into our mind, into our bodies that are healthy, that's only going to make us show up as healthy women.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. And we talk a lot about the holistic nature of, mind, body, spirit, focusing on what we're eating, focus on how we're exercising. And, again, just focusing on the people that are around you.
Yeah.
I think that is really important. And, we want to be able to share our ideas with people that are trustworthy and encouraging to help us bring those to life.
Yeah.
And sometimes our closest friends or family members can be the ones to help us discover what is it inside of us that we want to bring out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think too, another part of this conversation is not just considering the things that we take in, but also once we've had time to, incubate these different ideas and passions and desires of our hearts, then finding avenues to release those things that we've been, kind of pondering inside. And I think, Jamie, you bring up a great point, that being very intentional of selecting who is that core community of people speaking into your life, and what kinds of questions are they asking you? Are they causing you to think critically about the world around you? Are they, affirming your gifts and the things that you are really good at and the things that you're passionate about, and reminding you about those things, and not letting, the desires of even from your childhood, not letting those things die, but reminding you of who you are and what's possible. I think that is so key.
It's really good.
So just as we're, thinking about the inputs being the community of people that we surround ourselves with, the things that we watch, that we read, that we listen to, and then next, finding those avenues to release or to birth the things that are inside of our hearts. I think that is so key. And there may be different seasons where it might be frustrating to find those avenues. Like, I know I've felt that in different seasons, because maybe I've had the expectation that, this needs to be what I'm doing full time. This needs to be what I'm doing 40 hours a week, when maybe the purpose of that expression or that desire of my heart may actually be something that comes out as a hobby.
Right.
Or it might come out as like a side hustle that I do, and having grace to not like put myself under this rigid standard of like, oh, you're not doing it, well, just because it's not like the full-time thing.
Right.
But I think, it takes that that determination to really find, okay, what is the best outlet for this desire of my heart, for what I want to release in this season.
Yeah, for that particular expression. Like an example, you were talking about hobbies. I mean, we've talked about it before, but Lorena arranges flowers.
Yeah.
And not just any flower. Ladies, these, it's like, I can't even, they show up and I'm like, that's exactly if I could have envisioned it. So just a real talent, but it's a creative expression that's not your day job.
Right.
You have a completely different day job, but that allows you to express that side of your creative nature.
Yeah, absolutely. I think how I've thought about it with, just doing floral design is I don't feel like at this time in my life with just other life commitments and, financial needs, I don't feel like shifting to do that full time would necessarily be wise. And because it is such a passion for me, I don't want to like hang, life expenses and that kind of weight of responsibility on something that I just love to do when the opportunity comes.
Right.
So it's kind of assessing like, what are the things that, like, what are your life expenses, right? Your rent, your food, your travel and gas, money, like what is the best avenue to provide for those things? And then for some of the other creative outlets that may necessarily or not necessarily need to be the full-time thing that you're doing, what are the outlets that you can discover, create to release those passions?
Right. Whether from a, paid perspective or volunteer.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that's key. I was even watching this really cool documentary recently that really inspired me to get more involved in the community. And I live on the east side of Austin. And so I actually just even this past week, like emailed a principal at this school that is a young women's leadership academy right by my house, just to see if there's any volunteer opportunities because I want to serve the community. So that's another, outlet is volunteering.
Absolutely.
What could that open up for releasing some of the passions or desires of your heart or things that you're good at?
Right. Well, the next piece that we want to talk about is, of course, squashing limiting beliefs. So we talk a lot about squashing limiting beliefs because that's where we can rise above, right? And leave some of the things that have held us back in the past and step into a new realm, a new future. And I know when we were first talking about this topic, one of the things that we were talking about is there's this worldview that in a lot of ways that men are created to bring forward ideas and business. And I think a lot of that is shifting and changing where we are seeing more women step into creating business. So, we talked about the fact that women are created by God to birth, right? That's what we're created for, whether you choose to have children or not.
Yeah, that principle is key.
That's part of who we are. And so we have just as much as an ability to bring new things into the world, new business ventures, new creative outlets, new expressions, whether it's a nonprofit or a for-profit business. Women, we have just as much opportunity and definitely skill set and strengths to bring those things to be. So we want to squash that limiting belief that some of these things are reserved only for men. And so I think some ways that we can give some examples is by showing or talking about how some of these limiting beliefs may show up.
Okay. So like maybe some of the phrases that could run through our minds. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
So a couple, and I'll share a couple, and Lorena, jump in at any time.
Sure.
But so we, I've said it and I've heard it from other women that we have to act like a man in the workplace. So to prove our value or to prove our place.
That's an interesting thought. How do you think that actually comes forth, like women have to act like men in the workplace, like meaning that we have to be more blunt, or maybe we have to be more aggressive. Is that like, are those some of the things that could expand on that thought?
Right. And they're absolutely false narratives, because not all men are aggressive.
That's true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we create
That's a
this thought,
persona.
and like, I have to be tough. I can't show emotion. I can't show my nurturing or soft side. When in fact, it's the creation of both man and woman and the balance of that is needed in a workplace.
That's so cool, because I just even think back to like just the creation story and narrative of, you know, when Adam and Eve were first created in the garden before sin, before Genesis 3, where God gave
the good times.
Yeah. Where God gave the mandate to be fruitful, multiply, you know, to subdue creation to both Adam and Eve. So I think that just reaffirms like what, Jamie, like what you're saying is that it's not just men that bring forth ideas and create, like it's men and women. And I think what's also important to emphasize is it's men and women doing it together. And so as we create, you know, new business ventures and things in the workplace, it's men and women doing it together. Yeah. Something too, experience that comes to my mind is, that limiting belief that we have to act like men in the workplace. Maybe one of those expressions is not showing emotions. I know for me, when I'm angry, I cry. Like that's just like an expression of my anger. It's just tears that come out. And sometimes it's like this kind of like, breathing. And it's just,
I've been there. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've done that before, different bosses of mine that are strong, domineering male figures. And at first I was like, when I first started in that role, I was like, I can't do that because I'm, an entry level position and I'm a woman, like just those thoughts running through my mind. And I was like, wait, like that's a lie, because if I actually let myself show that emotion, I create an invitation to be vulnerable and to be real. And I think that is something that can unlock just a powerful experience for anybody that you would work with, is just to be able to be real.
Absolutely. It would be refreshing if everyone could be that way, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think some other things that we may tell ourselves is, from a finance perspective, I'm not really good at that. I'll just wait until I have a husband, or I'll let my husband take care of that piece.
That's interesting. Where do you think we learned that?
I culturally, I think culturally, it dates back to, the 50s and, probably before, but
interesting.
I just know there was, different generations viewed things differently, man being the head of the house, therefore taking care of the finances, women being in the home, which, hey, if that arrangement it works for you, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
However, what we're trying to share here is that we have a responsibility as women to have knowledge, to gain wisdom, gain knowledge, to organize our finances, be in control of those things, as much as possible. And just know that we have I would say just the smarts, like, we have just those, again, the same opportunities to take control of those areas of our lives.
I think that's powerful, Jamie. Something that my boyfriend and I often talk about is how we want to be partners, or we want to be assets to one another. And while I know that there are, certain strengths that he has specifically when it comes to finances and investing and wisdom in that sphere, I've also purpose to grow and learn new things in the area of my finances as a single woman, because I know that I do want to be a strength. Like, even if, I don't know all the things, like I still want to learn and grow so that I can be a wise steward of what is given to me.
That's right. That's so good. I love the way you say that. I like to say that be a wise steward, be a steward of what we're given.
Yeah. And it can be in so many different ways, even if it was things that maybe your parents growing up or guardians did not model for you. Like I know for me, like I never really sat down and like watched my parents pay the bills, but like I've had conversations with other women, like this one lady who's amazing CPA and accountant. She was like, yeah, my dad sat me on his lap when I was a little girl and we paid the bills together and I saw where money went. And I was like, that's really cool, but she had that experience and that exposure. But even so, like if that is, something that you realize that, oh, maybe, that's something I wasn't given in childhood, it still doesn't prevent you from learning something today.
Right. And there's so many opportunities for learning and so many classes and so many individuals that have mastered. One woman that I take classes from is Christina Wise with Wealthy. She breaks it down into very digestible chunks, and teaches you not only about debt payoff, but, how to manage your money, how to get smart and have a budget and how many bank accounts should you have and how do you funnel things. So there's just so many opportunities, ladies, to, again, steward what you're given well and to squash the limiting belief that only a man can do that. And I think, one of the last ones we wanted to talk about is this. I don't know where this comes from, but I've heard women say this before.
Okay. What is it?
That I have to put aside my dreams and my passions for my boyfriend or my new husband. Like he wants to do this and he wants to build that. So I just have to put my things aside and so that he can live in his dream. Again,
what's your take on that, Jamie?
Again, I think, hey, if that's what you want to do and you've discussed going into partnership and working together in that, and that is also part of your passion, great. But if that dream of his is very different and distinct from your dream, then you absolutely need to bring yours forward as well. So there's, I would say that there probably needs to be a deep conversation, maybe with a counselor present.
That's one way to do it.
If there's a feeling that I have to put my desires and dreams aside. And, I hear it from moms as well. Moms that have small children or just children in general, like, well, my life is my kid. My life is my kid. But that's not really demonstrating for our children a good picture. Because again, like if your passion is child rearing, great. Like there, no harm, no foul. Like I support that and that's great. But if you have a dream for doing something else, then your kid should see you live that out because that's going to help strengthen them in the moments where they come up against that same challenge, maybe in themselves. Like, should I pursue this or should I just let it die? So again, we want to be able to encourage you to bring your ideas into the world because that's really what we're created for. Everyone on this planet, God put a purpose inside and we need to steward it well.
Yeah.
And find a way to bring that out because it could be life-changing for people around you, for people in the community, for the world. Like who knows? Seriously, like what you think is a small idea could literally change the world.
I think that's powerful, Jamie. And before we move into just the next piece of our podcast, I just want to say that I think like finding again the right outlet for the desires of your heart, these ideas that you have for the season that you're in. Again, if you are, a mother right now and you're raising children, like it might not be, something that you necessarily can do full time, but I would encourage you don't like give up on the dream wholesale because as Jamie is saying, like you showing and demonstrating the things that you're passionate about and going after it, even if it's just in the capacity of like a side job or, a hobby in this season of life, it's an invitation for your children to see that you do value your purpose and your God-given design and the things that only God has uniquely put inside of you. And I think that that does also speak to dating relationships and marriage relationships as well, is that both, men and women, the man and the woman in the covenant, lay their lives down for one another and serve each other's dream to make room for the desires of their heart. I think it can go both ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think that's just super healthy, is, building relationships, building community, whether it's in this smaller scale of, a marriage relationship, dating relationship, or family, or, friendships around, like building that supportive network that every person's dream matters, and there's space for that. And you as a woman to uniquely incubate that dream and then bring it forth.
So good. I just want to stand up and applaud you.
Thanks, Jamie. So as we transition now just to a quick health and hospitality tip, the one that I want to talk about today is actually really relevant because I'm feeling it in my body, is a reminder to stretch.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like, I know that for me, with exercise, I'm like, okay, it's just enough that I got out there and ran, or that I did Camp Gladiator. I did a little workout. I totally forget about stretching.
Yeah.
But man, this is day 3 of me getting back into my workout game.
Ooh,
and
little sore?
I'm very sore. I feel the lactic acid in my muscles. I'm like, got to get those out. So just a reminder, ladies, to stretch when exercising before and after. You'll feel so much more flexible and limber after doing that.
It really helps. And just believe me, as you get older, ladies, like you're in one generation, I'm in a whole other couple ahead of you.
Just one.
But it makes a difference.
It does.
And how you sleep and just how you recover from a workout.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be like, oh, I have to do it at this exact time. Like stretch while you're sitting and watching TV.
Yeah. Like do some arm circles, as you need a 5-minute break from looking at a computer. I know a lot of us are working remotely right now.
Yeah.
You're working for an hour or two, stand up and just do some arm circles, frontwards and backwards to loosen up your shoulders.
Leg bends.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's a good one because we do forget that. And ouch.
Ouch.
Okay, so our last piece today, ladies, is we want to take a minute to promote something really exciting that we are about to embark on as our next phase of the Zveda She Rises podcast. So what we found is that you have a lot of questions. And that was really a big part of the reason why we started this is because we knew that we had a lot of questions that we wanted answers to, and we wanted to talk those things out. But as we've embarked on our 14th podcast, we're getting a lot of questions from you. I'm hearing more from my friends and those in my circle, like, man, I've come up against this challenge. I want to talk about, tell me what I should do. Can you feature this on the podcast? And we have featured many of those questions. Well, we're expanding this to a What Women Want to Know table talk. And we will be recording our first one coming up this weekend. So we just want to make sure that you continue. If you're hesitating for any reason to send in those questions, don't. I guarantee you there are other women that are struggling with that exact same question. And we want to bring those out. So we're going to host 8 women around a round table and just pick some questions. So Lorena, give us a couple of teasers about what kind of questions we're going to.
Yeah, I was about to ask, are we sharing what
dig
the topic
into?
is? So we actually, just in this time of being in a pandemic, and there's a lot more social separation happening for, rightful reasons that we do want to respect and honor. There's been an impact on connection.
Yeah.
And the theme of this table discussion with the ladies who are actually is going to be at my house coming over for brunch is that we want to focus on cultivating connection and what that looks like, not only just, with friends, but maybe even walking into talking about some impacts on dating relationships. And so we want to talk through, like one of the sample questions could be, what does it look like to set boundaries with friends? Or what does it look like to assess my friend circle and decide, okay, maybe who needs to be pulled in closer and who might be someone that maybe I'm not going to invest as much in? Like, how do you assess that? How do you tell the difference of like who needs to be in your like group of like 5 or 6 people versus like more of an acquaintance? So that's just one of the little tidbits that we'll be talking about. And what I'm really excited for is that it's not going to be just me and Jamie speaking. We're going to have many other voices present at the table, sharing their thoughts and opinions, knowing that it's going to be a lively conversation of many different viewpoints.
Yes. So we will keep you updated on the What Women Want to Know table talks. Excited to be launching those. Ladies, again, send us your questions. You can always respond in the comments, and you can also shoot us an email. So love to hear from you. Thanks so much for joining us this week. And we hope that you've been inspired to really think about what is that inside of you that is ready to be birthed and brought into the world. Have a great day. Thanks for listening to the Zveda podcast. Keep your questions coming so we can rise together. Visit Zveda.com to talk to us and join our community. That's Zveda.com. We'll see you next week.